You see the click before you hear the words. Metal closing around my wrists, a sound that somehow snapped the whole room into focus. A minute before that, the guy at the desk was smiling like he'd won the lottery, waving a torn boarding pass like a trophy. And then he was staring at me and I was thinking this is either going to ruin me or change everything. And I swear I didn't expect it to go the way it did. My name is Marcus Hale. I run Hale and Rowan Logistics, or I did most of the talking while other people did the paperwork. And that night I was just a tired traveler in a gray hoodie carrying a leather weekender bag that had more scuffs than sheen. I had a flight home to Maple City 3 days before the holidays, a kiddo's birthday on my mind, a cheap watch on my wrist because I like not flashing. I looked ordinary on purpose. I wanted coffee and a window seat and nothing in the world to go wrong. Act 1. Hook. I get to the executive club entrance and there's this guy behind the podium. Sam Ridley, square jaw uniform pressed so hard it looked like it could cut you a smirk that had been practicing for years. He's flirting with a woman in mink, Vivian Cartwright, who carries a purse that could pay my mortgage for a month. They laugh at the right moments, then they look at me the wrong way. You know that feeling when someone scans you like an object and decides you don't belong? That was Sam's whole job. He pointed at the sign, Executive Access Only, and treated me like I'd wandered into the wrong movie. I slid my passport and phone across the counter. Flight 212 to Maple City. Polite, tired. Sam didn't bother to look. He said, "Delivery's in the back, pal," like he was handing down a sentence. I said, "I'm a passenger." He told me to go downstairs and stand in line with everyone else. He asked for my pass, held my phone under the scanner, and here's the part that should make you angry. The machine beeped green, then Sam's fingers moved like slow knives. He punched keys and suddenly the green was red. "Invalid," he said, smiling. "Probably fraud." I watched him do it. My stomach went cold because it wasn't a glitch. It was a choice. The woman in mink sniffed loudly like perfume could be evidence. She told him to call the police. Sam put a hand near his taser, and the theater of it all began. A couple of younger guards jogged over nervous. They loved the idea of defending someone richer than themselves. One of them reached for my arm. When he shoved me, the weekender bag fell and a small velvet box tumbled out, my daughter's birthday present. Vivian kicked it as if it were trash. I felt hot and then a kind of cold calm like the moment before a storm. I could have screamed. I could have thrown the counter at him. Instead, I dialed a number only a few people in the world knew. Oliver answered on the second ring, my board chair in London, and I said, "Wake the board. We've got a problem at Riverside Terminal C." Act 2. Effort and turning point. Sam thought I'd called a lawyer or some bodyguard crew. He started in with more bravado. "You're under arrest for trespassing if you don't leave." He cuffed me and pushed me up against the glass because that's the power play makes someone small until they disappear. I let him. Cameras were on us. People were filming. The guard thought he had solved the puzzle. Then, a man in a pilot uniform stopped and his jaw dropped. Captain Reed, chief pilot for the Aerospan Alliance, dropped his flight bag. He looked at me and then at Sam and said, "What the hell are you doing?" In a second, Sam was shrinking. Reed looked like a tornado had hit his calm. He stepped forward, shoved a kid from behind the counter back, and said, "Unhand him." That was the moment the whole scene flipped. The pilot's voice cut through the static and a dozen little lies started to unravel. I kept my voice steady while Oliver connected me to downtown. The airport director, Ethan Cole Security Ops, even the mayor's office. I asked for the logs from the terminal system. Sam had manually overridden valid scans before. The screen showed it. There it was, time-stamped and rude as sin, user Ridley. Force deny. Reason, suspicion of fraud. The room inhaled. You could hear it. People who thought they were spectators suddenly understood they were witnesses. I told Ethan to bring a tablet and a laptop. If he had been doing his job, maybe this wouldn't have been a public execution of a man's dignity. But he wasn't doing his job. He was, as the pilot would later tell me, part of a system that let crates move through at 3 a.m., unmanifested a dirty little flow of things that didn't get checked because it was easier to look the other way. I dug. I asked the clerk's ID his overrides the frequency. 43 times in 6 months he'd forced a deny on passengers who didn't fit his mental dress code. Mostly people of color, mostly international travelers. There were other oddities, sudden life changes, cash payments, and items that never made it to evidence. Someone was skimming. Someone used authority to make a living. What I did next wasn't about showing I was rich. It was about leverage and pressure and truth. Slow, thoughtful, undeniable. Oliver hit a court injunction, legal teams queued, and the board got logs and emails before the guards could decide on a statement. I asked the officers to photograph my wrists, the marks the box Vivian had kicked. I filed a complaint for assault and false imprisonment. On social media, the publicly posted video, the one the kid in the suit had uploaded, started to spin like wildfire. Act 3. The win and the aftermath. Within the hour, newsrooms were calling. The airport director's office looked like someone had opened a furnace. Papers shredded, tempers shredded. Sam was put in a chair against the wall, then, later, in a holding cell with real bars. Ethan Cole's desk saw the FBI. Vivian's phone stopped ringing. Her bank calls began. Oliver froze Cartwright Biologics, the company she rode on, as a precaution pending an audit. The little world that believed money bought everything started to crack. On the flight to Maple City, I sat in seat 1A and watched clouds, and the adrenaline that had fed me in the terminal turned into exhaustion. Captain Reed came by, later quiet now. He told me the truth, that the executive club had been a blind spot for years, that ground crews had whispered about unmanifested loads, that no one had wanted to look because looking would mean trouble. I didn't feel victorious so much as weary, like someone who had put out a house fire and realized the wiring in the whole neighborhood was faulty. Back home, my daughter ran into me on the tarmac like a comet. I gave her the velvet box with a locket, the small thing that had started the whole mess. Reporters shouted questions. I said one thing, and it was all I had to say: dignity isn't a first-class amenity. It's a human right. That line spread, because people needed it to be true. But here's the part that should keep you up at night. I used money and influence to make systemic change. I called the board. I froze accounts. I triggered audits, and I lit a fire under federal investigators. The corrupt folks got caught because I had power to force the cameras open. What if I didn't? What if the guy in the hoodie was less visible? What if no flight attendant dropped a bag and a pilot's voice didn't cut through? How many unheard, unrecorded humiliations happen every day because someone doesn't have the right phone number, the right suit, the right backer? So yes, Sam went to federal custody. Ethan's career ended. Vivian's privilege crumbled. But this isn't a neat superhero tale. It's messy. We exposed an Operation Sure, but the solution wasn't just to tear people down. It was to change contracts, introduce transparent audits, and retrain staff. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the system fixed so other people's dignity wouldn't be disposable. That said, I won't pretend there wasn't satisfaction watching karma play out. Watching someone who believed their job was to keep others in their place get stripped of that place. It's electric. But then you remember, institutions are bigger than a man. You can fire a Sam, you can indict an Ethan, but if the policies that let them act go unchanged, another Sam will stand up. So I'm telling you this not for applause and not because I'm proud of the phone calls that can freeze shipments, though they were effective. I'm telling you this because it's real, because it shows how prejudice can be institutionally protected and how it only takes one well-documented moment to expose it. And it's also a reminder power cuts both ways. I used my resources to seek accountability. That method worked for me. But it's a messy precedent when justice looks like leverage. I want to hear from you. Did Marcus do the right thing? Was it justice or payback? Have you ever been judged and pushed aside because of how you looked or where you came from? How did you respond? Drop a comment below. Tell your story. The channel reads them all. If you think dignity is non